It is simply wonderful to be with you this afternoon on one of the great days in the life of our college. I want to first thank George Lopez, who's disappeared here, our Beckwith artist in residence, for that beautiful music. Thank you, George. It is again my privilege to preside over these exercises that we hold annually to celebrate and honor outstanding academic achievement by students. Why do we do this? Rather obvious question, but we place a deep premium here on intellectual excellence. It is at the center of our mission, and we value the hard work and achievement that results in that drives that. The accolades today are not easily earned. Ours is a very rigorous academic program, as our students will attest to. The standards of excellence are challenging, and the expectations set by our faculty are very high. The outstanding level of achievement that's demonstrated by our students requires intense focus, a deep pride in one's work, and a passion for learning, a willingness to fail, and it warrants our full appreciation and the congratulations that we offer today. Our recognition of Bowdoin Scholars goes back to 1941. In those days, the students here were all men, and the honor was then named exclusively for James Bowdoin III. But in 1997, the college decided it was appropriate to reestablish this tradition in the name of James and Sarah Bowdoin, who was an active partner of his in creating our college. The Honorable James Bowdoin III lived from 1752 until 1811, the son of James Bowdoin II, for whom the college is named and named in his honor by his son. James II was a political and intellectual leader during the Revolutionary War and later twice elected the governor of Massachusetts. He was a successful entrepreneur, a member of the elite business society in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which in those days included the District of Maine. He was a man with profound interest in learning, who along with John Adams and John Hancock and others founded the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Visitors to Boston can find Governor Bowdoin's grave in the Granary Burying Ground on Tremont Street, near where Hancock and Samuel Adams are buried, and it was Adams, who as then governor, signed the charter that established Bowdoin College in 1794. Governor Bowdoin's son, James II, was one of our country's first connoisseurs of American and European culture and politics, a diplomat, an agriculturalist, a collector who acquired a substantial library, significant art collection, and impressive array of scientific materials, which we at the college are the inheritors of. And he also provided the land and the funds to help establish this first college in Maine. Sarah Bowdoin traveled to London and Paris from 1805 to 1808 with her husband when he served President Thomas Jefferson. He was actually ambassador to Madrid, but for reasons that are lost to history, or at least that I do not understand, they lived in Paris. Seemed like a pretty good gig. Sarah kept a journal, which can be found in special collections here at Bowdoin today, documenting the daily life of their family. And it appeared from all accounts that they flourished there, entertaining Americans living in Paris and important friends of America. She was very much involved in the collecting activities of the couple, and we therefore owe her a deep gratitude of debt for the treasures that we have inherited at the college. And in fact, both James and Sarah Bowdoin signed the deeds transferring the land from the Bowdoin family to the president and trustees of the college in that day. Today, we remember the two of them through this annual event and with two other traditions. The Gilbert Stuart portraits of James and Sarah Bowdoin in the Museum of Art are decorated today with laurel garland. And on this day, and you may have noticed this, we also replace our large American flag on the quad with a smaller flag, one that flew over the U.S. Capitol on August 7, 1963, to commemorate the birth of Massachusetts Governor James Bowdoin II. So thank you for joining us here this afternoon to remember Bowdoin's history, and importantly, to congratulate our students on remarkable academic achievements. It is now my pleasure to introduce this year's Sarah and James Bowdoin Day student speaker, Madeline Dupre, class of 2020. Madeline is an economics major and cinema studies minor from Weston, Massachusetts, or as we say here, just outside Boston. She's talked about a class outside of her core curriculum, film genres in American cinema. She and I were just talking about that as we were processing in. The course focused primarily on the horror genre, although skeptical at first and apparently not a fan of horror movies because they scared you. Madeline discovered new layers of meaning and themes that have changed her perspective on film genre that she once thought frivolous. Now she applies this new way of thinking to how she makes connections through her daily life. And for Madeline, this is the true benefit of a liberal arts education, learning to find meaning in everyday interactions with familiar ideas or discovering the extraordinary in the ordinary. Please join me in welcoming Madeline Dupre.
Thank you, President Rose, parents, faculty, classmates, alumni, and honored guests. In space, no one can hear you scream. That is the tagline of Ridley Scott's 1979 horror classic, Alien. Well, it might be true that no one can hear you scream in space. I'm fairly certain that the entire neighborhood heard me scream the first time I watched Alien. I have never enjoyed horror movies. My heart races uncomfortably as the eerie music score begins to play. I cover my eyes in anticipation of jump scares, and by the end, I'm usually hiding under a blanket. I never understood how some people seem to derive pleasure from the experience of pure terror. And while I know that many movies have cultural significance, horror films have always appeared to me to be little more than cheap thrills designed to entice bored teenagers, not an art form deserving recognition or discussion. Or so I thought, until I took Cinema Studies 2264, Film Genres in American Cinema. Although I'm majoring in economics, I thought it would be interesting to learn about a subject that's outside of my core curriculum. I signed up for the class expecting to watch iconic films like Citizen Kane or Sunset Boulevard. When I discovered that the syllabus also included movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Blair Witch Project, I asked myself, really? Is this some sort of mistake? Despite my fear of watching these movies and my skepticism about the value of actually studying them, I gave my professor the benefit of the doubt and decided to give the horror genre a chance. And I am so glad that I did. The films that I assumed were nothing more than shallow teenager flicks are actually fascinating pieces of cinema that have thematic depth and incorporate elements of psychology and sociology in unexpected ways. Some of our classroom discussion focused on the purpose of vampires, mummies, and other monsters in certain subgenres of horror films. Among other things, I learned that monsters elicit revulsion and terror because they unnaturally transgress boundaries that society keeps separate. Zombies, for example, scare us not because they're dangerous, but because they cross the line between life and death to categories that are critically separate in our structured worldview. Similarly, werewolves violate the boundary between human and animal, terrifying viewers by disrupting one of our most basic understandings of the world around us. We also learned that audiences derive gratification from monster movies not because they like to be scared, but because the inevitable defeat of the monster comforts our subconscious minds by assuring us that these societal boundaries cannot be breached. So, for example, when the extraterrestrial shapeshifter is killed at the end of The Thing, the film reaffirms society's categories of real and unreal by destroying the creature that represents both. What I loved most about the class is that it revealed an intricate, deeper level of meaning to a type of motion picture that I wrongly thought was unworthy of study. With the few horror films I had watched previously, it did not occur to me that they might have artistic merit, and I certainly never considered the possibility that they offer a glimpse into the workings of the inner mind. My cinema studies course taught me to evaluate and analyze something as commonplace as horror movies and discover layers of meaning and themes that have changed my perspective on the film genre. The same phenomenon has occurred with many of my other courses. Following my first few economics classes, I could no longer walk into a store without reflecting on the market forces of supply and demand at work around me. I would glance at a sweatshirt and would find myself considering its price in terms of marginal utility and profit maximization. Similarly, after a social psychology class, I began to notice interpersonal dynamics among my friends that were previously imperceptible to me. Surprisingly, I've found that many of the most intellectually eye-opening moments in my time at Bowdoin have involved the transformation of my perspective on the commonplace. Whether it's watching a horror movie, shopping for clothes, or just hanging out with friends, I've learned to apply my liberal arts studies to everyday life. My experiences at Bowdoin have allowed me to constantly discover unexpected connections and surprising importance in my daily interactions with familiar ideas. The fascination in finding meaning and depth in the seemingly simple has caused me to more closely investigate the world around me and appreciate the significance of things and experiences that were previously unremarkable. I like to think of it as discovering the extraordinary in the ordinary. Whether you're studying multivariable calculus, Russian literature, the ecology of marine organisms, or horror films, a liberal arts education gives us the tools to re-examine everyday experiences and uncover complexity that is hiding in plain sight. So take a biology class and learn how trillions of individual cells make up your body. Take a music class and learn to hear harmonic intervals in everyday songs. Take a computer science class and learn how algorithms power all of your favorite apps. And if you're not too frightened, you can even take a cinema studies class and learn how subliminal images are used to scare you in The Shining. Whatever classes you take, learn to discover the extraordinary in the ordinary. Because, just like the shapeshifter in The Thing, not everything is as simple as it appears. Thank you.
Fantastic, Madeline. Thank you. So we begin this afternoon's recognition of scholars with the presentation of the Goodwin Prize, and I invite our recipients to come to the stage. The Goodwin Prize was established in 1906 by Mrs. Maud Wilder Goodwin in memory of her husband, Almond Goodwin, class of 1862. The prize is commonly given to one exemplary member of Phi Beta Kappa, but as you can tell, this year we have two exemplary members of Phi Beta Kappa who share the prize, and it is my pleasure to tell you a little bit about each one of them. Sierra Sohikian is a neuroscience major concentrating in psychology who is planning one day to attend medical school. A diehard rugby player, she plays for the varsity team, loves the team for its inclusivity and competitiveness. The players are always pushing each other to be better on and off the field. Sierra loves the outdoors, is a leader of trips at the outing club, studied abroad in New Zealand where each weekend she headed out to go backpacking with her friends. She's on the alpine ski team and is pursuing an internship next year at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado. Sierra said she had a difficult experience last year that also revealed to her the remarkable community spirit of Bowdoin. When she suffered a partial stress fracture in her back, very painful, was unable to be active, she struggled, obviously, but her professors, her peers, and particularly her teammates helped her cope, get her through it, and she is grateful and amazed for the amount of support and care that she received. Other things to know about Sierra: she is an admissions tour guide, a quantitative reasoning tutor, has a twin brother at Colby, loves to draw, and watch the Great British Bake Off. EJ's son has been involved with many groups on campus, including College Guild, the Chinese Language and Culture Club, and the Bowdoin Consulting Club, but the one of most significance to her is the one that she co-founded and the one that she helps to lead, Smart Women's Securities. This is a campus group that teaches Bowdoin women the skills to succeed in the financial industry and, according to EJ, gives them confidence to enter what is still a male-dominated industry. As a math major, she's developed a strong interest in Bayesian statistics and hopes to study statistics in graduate school. Her love of math and statistics has not impeded her pursuit of other interests, from literature to psychology and theater. And during a memorable study abroad in France, she studied theatrical adaptations of Greek mythology and collaborated on a feminist play. And she says that studying the social sciences and the humanities has exposed her to many cultures and perspectives that make her a holistic scholar, while at the same time her intensive coursework in mathematics has allowed her to build expertise in her field. Sierra and EJ are two tremendously talented and accomplished Bowdoin students. Please join me in congratulating them for being this year's recipients of the Allman Goodwin Prize. Well done. This fall, 13 students have been elected to Phi Beta Kappa, all from the class of 2019. The Phi Beta Kappa Society, a national honorary society for the promotion and recognition of scholarship, was founded in 1776 at the College of William and Mary. The Bowdoin chapter was founded in 1825, the sixth in line of establishment. Election is based primarily on scholarly achievement, but consideration is also given to a student's entire record. Students elected to Phi Beta Kappa are expected, as you would assume, to be persons of great integrity and moral character. If the students elected to Phi Beta Kappa would please stand as I read each of your names and remain standing until I have read all of your names, I would be grateful. And I would ask the audience to hold your applause until I have gone through all 13 names. Evelyn R. Bellevue. Ivy S. Elgarden. Susanna C. Lawhorn in absentia. Brandon S. Morandi. Hannah E. Pucker. Sophie A. Sudavnikov. Sierra E. Sohikian. E.J. Sun. Daniel W. Valu. Evan A. Walters. Derek J. Yao. Victoria E. Yu. And Phoebe B. Zipper. Many, many congratulations on a remarkable achievement. A book that bears the replica of the early college bookplate that distinguishes the James Bowdoin collection in our library is presented to every undergraduate who carries a full course program and has received a grade point average of 4.0 during the last academic year. For this year, those recipients who are receiving it for the first time will receive The Maine Woods by Henry David Thoreau. And second-year recipients receive Edward Hopper's Maine, published by our own Museum of Art. And I would now like to invite Dean McCormick to the podium to announce this year's recipients who will come to the stage to receive their award.
From the class of 2019, Natasha A. Belsky. Alec T. Ferguson Hull. Susanna C. Longhorn in absentia. Catherine Liu. Miranda O. Miller in absentia. Hannah E. Pucker in absentia. Benjamin A. Ratner. Noah S. Rothman. Eric Werman in absentia. Victoria Estelle Yu. From the class of 2020, Grace Caudry. Victoria J. Clark in absentia. Caroline B. Farber. Grace A. Fenwick in absentia. Olivia K. Giles in absentia. Alana J. Haslam. Laura H.C. Howells in absentia. Tessa T. Peterson. Pauline M. Unitas. Felicia F. Wong. From the class of 2021, Zoe A. Dietrich. Connor W. Fitch. Emily M. Ha. Kimberly N. Hancock. Eliza Tate Jevin. Alina Lamb. Sabrina Lynn. Hallowell P.C. Line. Molly M. Moore. Keenan Murray. Audrey R.L. Ruman. Juliana C. Tauby. Eva K. Verzani. Annika F. Williams. And Jangkun Wu.
Congratulations to all of you. Fantastic accomplishment. Sarah and James Bowdoin Scholars are recognized each year in the fall on the basis of work that they've completed in the prior year. And the award is given to the 20% of all eligible students with the highest grade point average. This year we have 264 Sarah and James Bowdoin Scholars, and I'd like to ask those who are here to please stand so that we may recognize you for your tremendous work. Bravo. I'd like to now invite Dean McCormick back to the stage to introduce this afternoon's keynote speaker.
Thank you, Clayton. It really is my true pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker this afternoon, Cheryl Laird, Assistant Professor of Government, who was selected by vote of our students to deliver today's keynote address, this fall's Karofsky Faculty Encore Lecture. The Karofsky Family Fund was established by Paul Karofsky, class of '66, his brother Peter Karofsky, class of '62, and Paul's son David Karofsky, class of '63, all in memory of their father and David's grandfather, Sidney B. Karofsky. The fund, which has underwritten the Sidney B. Karofsky Prize for Junior Faculty and added in 2000 the Karofsky Lectures, has been a wonderful opportunity for us to showcase the junior faculty here at Bowdoin College and their strong teaching credentials and success here at the college. Assistant Professor of Government Cheryl Laird grew up in Wheaton, Maryland, and earned her undergraduate degree in Government and Politics and African American Studies from the University of Maryland at College Park. She earned her doctorate in political science from The Ohio State University, and her research focuses on American politics with a specialization in race and ethnic politics and political psychology. She has received several awards for her research, including the Rodney Higgins Best Faculty Paper Award from the American Political Science Association, and for her teaching, she was awarded the Ernest A. Callaway Junior Excellence in Teaching Award from the African American Studies program at St. Louis University. Professor Laird joined Bowdoin in 2017. In this semester, she is teaching courses titled Women of Color in Politics and Public Opinion and Voting Behavior. In all of her courses, Professor Laird considers interdisciplinary perspectives to broaden learning around identity and politics. Her talk today is titled, Starting from the Bottom, Now I'm Here, Life at the Intersection. Please join me in welcoming Cheryl Laird, Professor of Government, to the podium.
Thank you. So my voice is a little raspy and things, but we'll get through this. So good afternoon, parents, students, colleagues, and the Bowdoin community. My name is Cheryl Laird, and I'm Assistant Professor in Government and Legal Studies. Today I'll be giving my lecture, Started from the Bottom, Now I'm Here, Life at the Intersection. Here you go. And so I begin this lecture inspired by a song by the rapper Drake, right? Also known as Drizzy Drake or Champagne Papi, Drake is a high-profile rapper that has put out numerous albums and songs, but before Hotline Bling and Kiki Do You Love Me, Started from the Bottom was the 2013 hip-hop hit. Now, I'm not going to read the lyrics of this song because the language is incredibly explicit and inappropriate for this venue. I like my job, but I believe that the sentiment is one that I can apply to my own lived experience, as well as many others. Drake's song follows the canon of many rappers who discuss the hardships that they escaped in order to make it to success. Clearly, I'm not Drake, nor am I a rapper, though I often think about where I started and ponder how I find myself here, standing in front of you today. In the contemplative place, I puzzle with and reflect on the ways in which my identity were central to my upbringing. So, here's a picture of me when I was in the 7th grade, going through the trials and tribulations that was middle school. It's one of those transition periods of life that I try to throw to the recesses of my mind. I was awkward and a geek. I'm standing here before you, like high level of geekdom. when I see this photo, I see a first-generation Black girl that is the child of Jamaican immigrants that was often stepping into spaces in which my race and gender were quintessential factors in my life. Around this time, I found myself engaging in social circles with my peers that often highlighted and differentiated me based on my race and gender. I grew up in a predominantly Black, low-income, working-class neighborhood, but the public schools that I attended were outside of my community, which resulted in a second friend group that was comprised of white young girls from the suburbs. How did I know that they lived in a suburb that was different from my own? Well, they had a giant evergreen tree in the center of their community where all the families paid extra on their electric bill to light it up at Christmas. The whole neighborhood would then gather around the tree and sing Christmas carols and celebrate. I thought they lived in Whoville from How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Navigating back and forth between these two worlds meant that I was frequently challenged with who I was and what I represented. Even prior to the 7th grade, I had a clear realization of this difference. When Halloween came around in elementary school, there used to be a Halloween parade. Little kids dressed up in homemade and store-bought costumes and marched around the suburban neighborhood where my white friends lived to show off their creations. Now, my mother is a Jamaican woman through and through, where the belief in superstitions, witchcraft, spirits, and duppies, which is Jamaican patois for ghost, are real and not to be played with. Additionally, she had heard stories about children receiving tainted candy, so trick-or-treating was out of the question. However, She realized that by sending my brother and I to schools, we needed to fit in. Even if she detested the holiday and we were working with a very limited budget. This meant that our costumes came from the grocery store. These are the kind of costumes with the plastic mask and the rubber string that goes behind your head to keep it in place, and a plastic bag-like onesie that you pull over the top of your clothes. Yeah, it's pretty low budget. So one year, my mother bought the clown outfit that came with a clown mask for my brother, and I was Barbie. Yeah. At this time, Barbie's collection was very minimal in terms of diversity, and Dr. McStuffins wasn't a thing. Mattel's most available Barbie products were the ones with white skin, pink lips, and blonde hair. So I need you to understand what this means, like really understand. I am a black girl with brown skin, wearing that white Barbie mask in a pink and white plastic onesie with the word Barbie written across it. You can see my brown skin through the eye sockets of the mask, and my black hands are sticking out the armholes. Additionally, my mother had done my hair in twist with click-clack hair ties at the base of each twist and barrettes on the end. Because my hair is curly texture and the twists were large, they didn't lay flat. They were cute, but yeah, Barbie is rocking blonde plastic hair, Afro-textured twist that stick out. So I went to school with my costume, there in the picture, and when it came time for the parade, we were all rounded up outside, quite reminiscent of people attempting to wrangle cats. With my plastic Barbie costume on, I looked over to my white gal pal at the time, and my jaw dropped. My friend, let's call her Kelly, was a princess on a horse. A princess on a horse. Her mother had sewn her entire costume so that she had a princess gown, pointed hat with veil, a handmade horse that hung on suspenders that went over her shoulders, sat around her waist, and her legs were decorated to look like that of a horse's. To boot, her mother had sewn 2 little legs on the side of the horse so that it looked like Kelly was riding side saddle. And there I was in my Barbie costume with my white and blonde mask with black-filled eye holes and Afro-textured hair, and black hands sticking out of my Barbie onesie. To this day, a photo of me and Kelly from Halloween sits on my mother's dresser. We are standing there, my arm over her shoulder, smiling at the camera, either because I managed to mess up the cheap rubber string on the mask, or I realized even at a young age just how ridiculous I looked, dressed up as white Barbie. I had taken the mask off. With my genuine gap-toothed smile and Kelly accidentally blinking while grinning, the photo was shot by her mother. The photo enshrined for me one of the earliest moments in which my race and gender were prominently placed in high relief. In the years after, these types of experiences continued. At any number of slumber parties and sleepovers with my white girlfriends, I was the black girl that became the center of attention because I pulled a bag of rollers out of my overnight bag and had to set my hair to go to sleep. When the game Beauty Shop was decided as an activity, I ended up playing beautician because I had clear instructions from my mother that these young girls are not allowed to undo my braids and plaits. It was clear to me from a young age that the beauty standards were different between me and my friends. Their understanding of girlhood was one in which the basic routines that were normal in my life were distinctive and unusual to them. At home, The experiences with my Black girl friends were quite different. My neighborhood peers thought I was an odd duck, often characterized me as sounding white or behaving in white ways for loving reading and school. At the time, it was hurtful, but when I peel back the layers of what was happening around me, I realized that many of my girlfriends were dealing with distinct and unique constraints that were not happening over in Whoville. As low-income Black girls, many of my neighbors were dealing with constrained resources because they were disproportionately in homes with single mothers with limited education. Some were the children of teenage mothers that had sacrificed numerous social and economic opportunities to raise their kids. They were just making it on the jobs that were significantly underpaid and without the dual income that was much more common among my white suburban friends. To put this in perspective, the National Partnership for Women and Families reported that in 2017, Black women make 66 cents to the dollar relative to white men. This means that a Black woman has to work an extra 8 months to make the same wages as their white male counterparts. I recall when we transitioned to our teen years, my mother being very adamant about where I was allowed to go and who I was allowed to hang around when it came to young boys in the community. My naivete and ignorance of the unique space in which I fell as a Black girl minimized my understanding of her concern. My mother's concern was that I could become a teenage mom. Her worry was not without merit. One after the other, the Black girls in my neighborhood were becoming mothers. In some cases, 2 or 3 times over. I watched many not finish high school, others attempt relationships with their child's fathers that often fell through, and most having to decide on what they would do next to support their family. My friends having to take on these stressors in a space and time in which Black teenage motherhood was, and in some regards still, is stigmatized and vilified. These young women were viewed as individuals that went counter to societal norms. They were defined as a problem and seen as representatives of a cultural pathology that could not uphold mainstream values, and that their promiscuity plus poor decision-making was to blame for their circumstances. Only a few miles apart, 2 girlhoods existed, where the intersection of race, gender, and class were defining of those experiences. Legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality in her 1989 article to describe this unique form of marginalization experienced by Black women and women of color broadly construed. Crenshaw argues that Black women are sometimes excluded from feminist theory and anti-racist policy discourse because both are predicated on discrete set of experiences that often does not accurately reflect the interaction of race and gender. These problems of exclusion cannot be solved simply by including Black women within the already established analytical structure. Because the intersectional experience is greater than the sum of racism and sexism, any analysis that does not take intersectionality into account cannot sufficiently address the particular manner in which Black women are subordinated. In layman's terms, intersectionality describes the experiences that result from the interaction of both race and gender, when in each group, one is of a marginalized status. Traditionally, structures and institutions are simply just not designed to think of it in terms of this interaction. Furthermore, other identities, like class, are inextricably intertwined with race and gender exacerbating the distinctive marginalization one may experience. Crenshaw's examination of this phenomenon primarily focused on Black women in employment and women of color experiencing domestic violence. But the framework can be applied more broadly to understand numerous places in public policy and politics where current structures are unable to answer key questions about unique experiences. For instance, I stand here today as an expectant mother. My partner and I are quite excited about our new arrival, and like typical expectant parents, trying our best to prepare. Yes, we are in denial about any notion of preparedness, but ignorance is bliss, right? At the time we planned to start our family, we took into consideration any number of typical factors. But at the same time, news was also breaking on factors that had not come to mind. In 2017, National Public Radio and ProPublica did an investigative special series entitled Lost Mothers: Maternal Mortality in the United States. In this series, they documented the high levels of US maternal mortality and the potential failures of the medical community and political institutions to be responsive to this trend. They noted in the report the ability to protect the health of mothers and babies in childbirth is a basic measure of society's development. Yet every year in the US, 700 to 900 women die from pregnancy or childbirth-related causes, and some 65,000 nearly die, by many measures, the worst record in the developed world. The story garnered substantial media attention and resulted in other major news outlets, including the New York Times, covering and reporting on the story. The ways in which we are socialized to understand motherhood and pregnancy in American society often overlooks the substantial dangers and harms being faced by expectant moms. Furthermore, when this data is disaggregated to account for differences based on identities, the chasm between maternal mortality rates of white mothers and Black mothers is staggering. Black mothers are fighting an uphill battle during pregnancy and childbirth. Black women are dealing with immense social inequalities stemming from institutional racism and sexism, including limited access to safe neighborhoods, clean drinking water, and proper educational systems. Black women are also more likely to have unreliable or lack continuous healthcare coverage. In medical institutions, unconscious bias prevail, where Black women are frequently questioned during their care due to stigmatization and stereotypes that often find their concerns ignored, their reports of pains dismissed, resulting in an overall sense of devaluation. The research from the field of public health shows that ultimately the most significant factor to explain Black maternal mortality disparities relative to whites has to do with lifelong stress experience that results from the intersections of racism and sexism. Journalists Nina Martin and Renee Montanet conclude from their interviews with public health scholars that it's the discrimination that Black women experience in the rest of their lives, the double whammy of race and gender, that may ultimately be the most significant factor in poor maternal outcomes. An expanding field of research shows that the stress of being a Black woman in American society can take a significant physical toll during pregnancy and childbirth. Furthermore, there's even been definitional terms come up for discussing this, and Dr. Arlene Geronimos coined the term weathering to define how trauma of intersectional life has severe physiological and biological implications, Geronimus argues that weathering causes a lot of different health vulnerabilities and increases susceptibility to infection, but also early onset chronic diseases, in particular hypertension and diabetes. She found that the health vulnerabilities created by weathering disproportionately affects Black women, and it accelerates their aging at a cellular level by 7.5 years. In the realm of pregnancy, the stress of an intersectional life can result in life-threatening and even fatal side effects. This stress is unique to the lived experiences of Black women and incomparable to that of their white peers. Black women are 49% more likely to deliver prematurely. Black infants are twice as likely to pass away as babies relative to their white peers. And unlike white women, accounting for factors that we often believe to be very considerable in diminishing these effects, income and education does not matter. The risks during pregnancy start early in life for Black women due to immense and unique inequalities, which means that from a public health and a public policy perspective, the medical field should be approaching the care for Black women with greater attention to potential challenges. From this series, the story of Shalon Irving stands out most to me. That is my PhD graduation photo, and the other photo is Shalon Irving. Irving was a striver, similar to myself. She earned a BA, 2 master's degrees, a dual subject PhD. She had experienced trauma at a young age, and as an adult was often riddled with self-doubt. She often felt like she wasn't doing enough and needed to try to do more to help African American women that mattered to her and to her research at the Centers for Disease Control. While career-driven, she desired to be a mother, and medical complications due to uterine fibroids, non-malignant tumors that affect up to 80% of Black women, made this difficult. When she did become a mom, the relationship with the child's father did not work out, creating added stress to her body. 3 weeks after having her C-section, Irving collapsed, and she passed away. Irving was a lot like me. She started from the bottom, and she had made it at a similar place to where I stand today. She had done everything right, pushed herself to the heights of excellence in the face of incredible odds, and yet still her resources, her education, and the village that she had created for her and her child could not save her. What happened to Irving is chilling, sad, and unacceptable. So I conclude with these final thoughts. We must ask ourselves, how can we do better? It demands a substantial examination about how we provide care. It requires us taking an intersectional approach to addressing health policy and practice in medicine. It necessitates a holistic examination of numerous political, social, and economic factors that define life chances for those that are marginalized at the intersections. We should not limit ourselves to understanding the world using singular categories that don't capture the essence of what it means to live in a particular body or life. We must complicate it and ask ourselves, what patterns have we missed because we opted not to interrogate the data, and what may not yet be understood? Thank you.
back to my notes in a minute. I just want to make the observation that on a day and in a moment when we celebrate remarkable academic achievement by our students, we're also reminded by Cheryl's remarks that at the core of our mission here, and I've talked about this a lot, is challenging ourselves to think differently, to push ourselves, to deal with the issues and the data and the facts that may be difficult to contend with, but are central to understanding our world better. And Cheryl, you have demonstrated how we should do that, so thank you very much. I'd like to have the last word on congratulations to our Phi Beta Kappa, cannot say that phrase today, Book Award recipients and Sarah and James Bowdoin Scholars on their outstanding accomplishments. So well done. Madeline, again, a wonderful speech. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us and your journey here. And to our pianist, George Lopez, thank you. You've appeared. Well done, right? Immediately following this event will be a reception in the Drake lobby, which is out into the lobby, and then you go downstairs. You will see it out there. I hope you'll all have an opportunity to join us. I'd love to say hello to all of you, and you'll get a chance to meet some of the folks here as well. I'd like to invite George back to the piano. Well done, thank you. And to be joined by Evelyn Beliveau, class of 19, Alana Haslam, class of 20, and Emily Ha, class of 21, who will lead us in the singing of the Alma Mater. I invite the audience to stand if you can. The words will are on the back of your program. And I'd ask you to remain standing until the Alma Mater is finished and the processional has left the theater. Thank you.
Her fame and sound abroad her glorious name. To Bowdoin, Bowdoin, lift your song, and may the music echo long o'er whispering pines and campus fair, with sturdy might filling the air. Bowdoin from birth, our nurturer and friend, to thee we pledge our love again, again. While now amid thy halls we stay, and breathe thy spirit day by day, oh may we thus full worthy be, to march in that proud company.